We start the 7th session of the last day. Adya tavat antimam dinam vartate chaturdivaसीयायाः अस्याः कार्यशालायाः सप्तमम अष्टमम च व्याख्यानम अद्य मदीयम भविष्यति. सप्तम व्याख्यानानन्तरम राकेश पांडे महोदयानां तथैव च शतावधानी आर गणेश महोदयानां अष्टम व्याख्यानानन्तरं बलराम शुक्ल वर्याणां च वक्तव्यं भविष्यति. तदनन्तरं च समापन सत्रमपि प्रायशः 55 निमेषात्मकं भविष्यति. So we are having 3 sessions. It's a marathon program, you can say, and I am grateful to all of you for all this support and bearing with us despite some technical issues and some inconveniences. So I am checking the waiting room also. I am continuously admitting, because yesterday Professor Varkhedi was in the waiting room and I couldn't notice, unfortunately, and he is a very busy person, and all these 3 days he has been constantly traveling, and despite that he was with us on the first day, and hopefully he will be with us on this last day also. So the 7th lecture we start. The 7th lecture by me, it is on dialogues in the medieval period through multilingual and multicultural approach. So as I have been saying, that during the first millennium, tremendous dialogues, rather fierce Vadas, debates were there between the Buddha Nayayikas and the Acharyas of great Acharyas of Gautam Nyaya. And the whole knowledge tradition, the whole epistemology rose to pinnacles because of that. Because whenever there are challenges, Purvapaksha is very strong. You have to reformulate yourself to meet the challenge and to devise new categories, like Udayanacharya and Nyaya Kusmanjali. He is building up such an argumentative structure to establish that God exists, to argue against the Buddhists, because the challenge is so tremendous from the Charvakas and the Buddhists. And as I have been saying, that the Purvapaksha doesn't die, it recurs and re-returns, it comes back again and again. So in the second phase of this history of our Vādas and Saṁvādas, or the third phase, you can say, whatever it is, after 10th, 11th century, the scenario changes a little bit, and the Buddhists are losing the ground, you can say, or they have gone away, actually, because Buddhism, this was the destiny of Buddhism in our country, that it could survive in the small pockets after that. It couldn't be in the mainstream. It could, as it was perhaps in Ashoka's time, or in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd centuries during the reign of some of the Buddhist emperors like Kanishka or Menander, Milinda. So it couldn't enjoy that prime status. And in small pockets, of course, even in South and in the borders of Tibet, even in Kashmir, Kaldana informs that up to 11th century, there was a strong school of Buddhist philosophers, and that is why Anandavardhana has to answer this Dharmakirti's commentator, and in his Dhvanyaloka even, it's the Kshanabhangavada poses a challenge even before the Dhvani theorist, and he's talking of that. So otherwise, from the main arena of Vada and Vivada, dialogues and discourses and debates, the Buddhists have gone. They have moved to Sri Lanka, Tibet, and other countries. Unfortunately, that was also very unfortunate. thousands and thousands of their works were lost, and ultimately a person like Rahul Sankrityayan had to venture to have very adventurous travels to restore some of the lost Buddhist literature. So without going into other details, I would now come to the 7th lecture, and the 7th lecture is Dialogues through Multilingual and Multicultural Approach. From 6th to 14th century, you can say. We will especially deal with dialogues between Vedic and Tamil cultures. They start right from the Vedic age, later Vedic age, you can say, because Tamil is also a very ancient language and the culture is also very ancient culture. And yesterday we have been discussing, a day before yesterday, the dialogic strategies in Silappatikaram and Manimekhalai. And we have also discussed about Agastya, who moves towards south from Vindhyachala. And he is one of the greatest dialogue persons, though a mythological person. Maybe history won't consider him modern history, but for us, Agastya is a great personality who elsewhere I have been delivering lectures on Agastya also. Wonderful stories about him, how he creates a bridge between Shaivism and Vaishnavism, visiting a Shiva temple there. He is debarred from entry. These stories are there. He is debarred from the entry, that your tilak is not Shaivite tilak, so you can't enter. So he changes the tilak and enters, but the image of the Lord Shiva changes into the image of Vishnu, and the priests are amazed. So all such stories about Agastya, because he is a person who is creating bridges across cultures, across Vedic and Tamil culture, and is creating systems of grammar and other schools there. That is also acknowledged, that the Tolkapya says that this grammar and the theories of language, they come to us from Agastya Muni. In Silappatikaram also this is acknowledged. So some of the additional factors conducive to creating dialogic situations, especially during this period, after 6th century up to 14th, 15th century, that the scenario changes to multilingualism. Now the modern vernaculars, the old forms of Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, they are coming. Avhat language has already come. Kalidasa writes some dohas in Apabhransha, almost in Apabhransha, in Vikmor So other languages are coming and they are being taking notice of. Anandvardhana is citing lot of Prakrit poetry. So this also is a factor contributing to the dialogues. Then the other factor is pilgrimage and traveling. Lots of travelers coming from China and other countries also. Even Japanese are coming. We should have prepared a systematic history of the pilgrimages and travelers from other countries in India. They have contributed a lot to the understanding of India, right from Megasthenes, who was a Greek traveler, and Heliodorus, who actually was an ambassador from Greece, and he created his Vasudev. He became a Vasudev Bhakta, and he created that famous pillar Heliodorus Stambh at Vidisha. So all of them have contributed to the enrichment of Indian culture and to create bridges across Greek and Indian cultures and to create dialogic situations. Then the temples, mathas and pithas, they have also enormously contributed to create dialogues. So these are subjects for different workshops and seminars actually. There was a seminar by a research institute, Anantacharya Research Institute at Mumbai. They called me for inaugural lecture. So the contributions of temple, please mute your mics. Somebody whose mic is not on mute.
Leena Mahodaya, please mute your mic. लीना सक्करवाल महोदय.
Professor
Astu
Mathur's mic
Sanjatam.
was Professor Mathur's mic was also unmute, and there is some other. Okay. Anyway, so I don't think any other person is in the waiting room. So we can have different sessions of discussion on the contribution of temples and mathas and different pithas like this Shankar pithas to creating bridges across different sects or to Shastric traditions or to dialogues. Then translations happen during this period. Not only this period, actually, the translations start from 1st, 2nd century, and the Balramji is a master of that area. So from him, I have learned a lot about these things, that how a medical practitioner from Arab world comes here. These are the facts earlier well known also. So he is sent by the Sultan of Arab, and Panchatantra goes to Arab world. It is enriched. It is further enriched there. Panchatantra, you see, it is not taken as it is. So they develop it and they spread it to Europe. It is not directly from Sanskrit sources that the whole Panchatantra and Aesop tales, all these things, they spread to Europe. It is through Arab world. It is through Persian, old Persian, Pahlavi, that our culture and our literary traditions, they are reaching the countries, other countries in the world. Then translations have contributed a lot. Then commentarial literature, Tika Granthas, all the great Tikakaras, whether it is Vallabhdev, Mallinath, Arungirinath, Dakshinavarthanath in Kalidasa's commentary literature, or great Bhashyakaras beginning from Patanjali to Shankar and Ramanuj and Madhva and others, they are having dialogue with the whole systems of knowledge, and they are also entering into Vivadas, into Vadas. So this commentarial literature grows enormously after 6th century and up to 18th century, and even up to 21st century. We have Tikakaras, great eminent Tikakaras. You see Ram Ratan, you see Ramakant Pandey. I consider him is a good commentator in the line of Mallinatha. So several such, Pattaviram Shastri in the Kashi Pandits. So they are the Tikakaras of that level. They also create Samvadas with the whole tradition. And nexus with rulers and royalty. This also has contributed a lot, because even the great saints, Munis, in this age, they are going to the royal court, not for any selfish purpose. You see, in Akbar's court, it's a very big tale. There is no time to. At least as many as 50 Jain Munis are visiting and honored by Akbar, and great personalities. Muni Hir Vijay, he was a revered figure, and he goes to the royal court of Akbar. He is very much honored by Akbar. Akbar listens to him, and he prohibits Gomans because of his discussions with even catching of fish in Kashmir is prohibited by Akbar, by orders of Akbar. Govad is prohibited by orders of Akbar. It is because of these dialogues with Jain Munis. He listens to them. I was talking about listening, you see. So very few persons have that quality of listening. Akbar had that quality, because otherwise he was illiterate. He couldn't properly read. But he was an extraordinarily gifted personality, and he had this wonderful capacity of listening. It is told that throughout nights and nights he would sit in his Ibadat Khana and listen to various Dharma gurus, and he learned a lot. He was hated by Maulvis because of that. So all these are the facts, no one otherwise. So all these things happen, and otherwise in Karnataka courts, in other courts also, the saints and divinities and scholars, they are going not for any selfish purpose, but to have Vadas and Vivadas. Madhav Deshpande has talked of the great debate between Rangoji Bhatt and Vidyadhish, and the king had to give a platform for such debates. So all these factors, they contribute they result into interaction between regional cultures, dialogues between Vedic and Tamil cultures, between regional literatures and regional languages. This is also very important, that Sanskrit language and literature, they are constantly having dialogue with vernaculars, their literature and their culture. And the vernaculars, regional languages, they are having dialogues. So I will briefly discuss Amir Khusro. I will omit, because we can, Balramji and we and some of us who have interest in the area, in this area, they can talk, we can talk amongst us for hours and hours together about Amir Khusro. And so I will not include him, it will take a long time, but about these four personalities very briefly I will discuss. Two Vādirājas are there, and because all of these three personalities above, they come from south, so maybe I may commit some mistake in my understanding, and all my reference books and literature is not here with me. I am in a alien country, so therefore these experts are here. If I commit any mistakes of omission and commission, only Abanish so far and Bhaskar Upreti, they have arrived. If somebody notices that Professor Barkhedi is appearing, then let me be informed, because the problems of Brajratan Joshi and Bhaskar Upreti and all these have been admitted. So far 41 persons are here. Many of them I hope will be, some of them I hope will be coming. So I will go ahead with these four, and this period is marked with interaction between, I have told it. Agastya I will omit, and Silapadikaram, Sri Krishna Bhakti. Actually that Kannagi, maybe something related with Krishna, and Kovalam is Gopalam, all these, and Kannagi goes to the temple. Sorry, Mani Mekhle goes to the temple of Kannagi and learns Buddhism and all these things. So many references to Vedanga, Shaiva Darshan, Brahmavad, Vaisheshik Lokayat and Ajivak. There, I will discuss some historical personalities, and as I said, the translations are happening. So translations from Tamil into Sanskrit and from Sanskrit into Tamil. This is very important, because now I have heard to many Malayalam critics, and some of the Malayalam critics and Tamil critics being in Sahitya Academy for 5 years. So they used to say that we want to do away with Sanskrit. Malayalam should not be ruled by Sanskrit. We have our own tradition of language, indigenous words are there. Why we should adopt Sanskrit words? And Tamilians also, they say, but they should be apprised of these facts, so that it's a very rich tradition of continuous dialogues between Tamil and Sanskrit, and both of them have enriched each other. Not that only Sanskrit has enriched other languages have very much enriched Sanskrit. This also should be acknowledged and accepted. There is nothing, you don't become small by acknowledging that you have. ज्ञान की परंपरा में आपने किसी से सीखा है, उसको आप स्वीकार करने में छोटे नहीं हो जाते, आपका बड़प्पन उससे होता है। मैं इसको संस्कृत का बहुत बड़ा गौरव मानता हूं कि संस्कृत ने हिंदी, मराठी, तमिल, तेलुगु, कन्नड़ आदि भाषाओं से बहुत कुछ लिया, उससे संस्कृत बहुत महनीय हुई। ये बहुत बड़ा गौरव संस्कृत का है। ये तो कुमारिल भट्ट बताते हैं कि संस्कृत में तमिल के इतने शब्द आ गए हैं, क्योंकि वो दक्षिण में रह रहे हैं। So Somya Jamatri Muni, the son of Somya Jamatri Muni, Abhirambar, he translated his grandfather's Tamil text Upadesh Ratnamala under the same title. The titles in both languages is the same. Then some of the classics of Sanskrit, they have been rendered into Sanskrit and re-rendered into Prakrit or Sanskrit or Tamil equally. So Uttar Purana is a well-known Jain text, and on the basis of that, so many kavyas or other texts in Sanskrit and Tamil were created. Yashash Tilak Champu, the story of Yashash Tilaka is very well known in the Jaina tradition. So that story is based in some of the Tamil kavyas or text. And Vadiraj, I will be dealing with him. He has written Yashodhar Charita and Haribhadraj Yashodhar Kavya. They are in Sanskrit, but in Tamil also Yashodhar Kavya is there. So this is a continuous exchange. And there is a Sarvanandi in 458 AD. He wrote a Tamil text in more than 1500 stanzas on Jyotish and mathematics. The text got lost, but in 12th century, Simhadev Suri translated it into Sanskrit. Now the beauty of it is that a knowledge text in Tamil, which is lost otherwise now, was available to this person in 12th century, and Simha Suri, and he translated it into Sanskrit. So we can recover that text through its Sanskrit translation. Then there were institutions where Tamil scholars and Sanskrit Pandits, they are having continuous dialogues. This Ghatika Sampradaya, I am told about it, Kanchi, around 4th century. So this continues during this period we are talking about. And in 16th century, Ahobal was a great personality. I think there is a mutt in Tamil Nadu, this Ahobal. We had something to do with that when I was there in Vice Chancellor, and we had to fund that institution in the Ahobal temple, etc. So that Atre Ahobal translated this text, Tamil text of Peri Vachan Pillai, Tanishloki, into Sanskrit. Then Ahobal also wrote a commentary, Valmiki Hridayam. So this is from Tamil Nadu. Then Andal, you see. Andal, a great saint, a divinity. She cast an everlasting impact on this medieval Sanskrit literature, like Mira in later Bhakti period in Hindi. This Andal, you see, on Mira also there are Sanskrit kavyas, up to Mira Lahiri of Pandit Kshamarao, such a beautiful poem. So the Sanskrit poets are enamored of Andal. The name Andal is not taken perhaps there. They call her Goda, and Chudikodut and Chudar Koti or Nappinai. Maybe I am wrongly pronouncing. So these names are prevalent, and it should be Goda. So several plays, Champu Kavyas, poems in Sanskrit were written about Andal, that is Goda. Goda Parinay. Goda Parinay Natak, Goda Parinay Champu, Goda Parinay Kavya, Goda Prapatti, Goda Mangal Shashan, Goda Majjan Vaibhav, etc., etc. Some of the names of the authors are also available. Whatever information is with me. Then Vādirāja, coming to him, he was a Acharya of 11th century. He flourished under the rule of Chalukya king Jagdek Mall Jayasimha in 11th century. And in his Nyaya Vinishya Vivaran, Vādirāja has refuted several rival doctrines. He brilliantly defends Syadvada against the vehement criticism of Shankaracharya. He also argues against Kumarila, Prashastapad, Ishwar Krishna, Mandan Mishra, etc. And Yashash Tilak Champu, by him we have talked about, and it's Tamil rendering. So Vādirāja also is being considered in the Tamil sources in Tamil language. Then we come to a great personality, Vedāntadeśika, in 13th century, 14th century, extraordinary philosopher, poet of this period. And Veṅkaṭanātha is, as far as I know, his other name. And he was given the title of Kavitarkik Chakravarti, sovereign of poets and logicians. He is, okay, Vedāntadeśika stands next to Ramanuja as the votary of Someshwar Singhal. So, as the votary of Ramanuja's Vishishtadvaita school, and other details I would omit. Maybe our friends from south, they might be knowing more about him. Then in 17th century, Veṅkaṭadvarin in his Vishwagunādharsh Champu describes Vedāntadeśika as a great debater who could explain most difficult prepositions in the. This Veṅkaṭadvarin is a great poet and a great philosopher, and he also comes in the line of this Ramanuja, so far as I know, and repeal the intoxication of his opponents. Veṅkaṭadvarin devotes as many as 12 verses to Vedāntadeśika in his Vishwagunādharsh Champu with some very succinct prose passages. This Veṅkaṭadvarin is a great poet. Wonderful poetry he writes, and unable to tolerate the praise showered on Vedāntadeśika. There are two. This Vishwagunādharsh Champu is a text in debate. It's a Vāda text in poetry. So these two Gandharvas are debating. I have told about it. The Krishanu and Krishashva. So Krishanu is describing the merits of different personalities of different tirthas and places, and Krishashva is refuting him. So, or I think Krishanu is the reviler, and Krishashva is the proponent who is giving justifications. So Krishanu asks, how can the words of a poet tender? How can the words of a poet tender like champaka flowers, decorating the head of goddess Saraswati, are able to break the hearts of the opponents in debate, hard like stones, as you claim? Bheda vida vishay vada patad durupapadartha sadhaka madot sada vahad bhutamakha dapagasya davinoda abhijata bhaniti padaravind nat khedapahara chaturodara madhava guna swada bhitushtaih modaya vo bhavatu Vedāntadeśika mani. Then ask this reviler, this Puru Pakshin, Katham nama druhini grahini chikura nikuramba chumbi champaka kusuma sukumara tara kavi kathaka kanthira gurorapi giro dustara prastara nishthura banghishta sasui radhay nirvedaya jayante. The summary I have given in the English, one sentence there. It will not be possible to translate it. It may take half an hour to explain such this succinct phraseology of this Veṅkaṭadvarin. Then very beautiful stanzas about him. I am afraid I will have to omit all this. Vedāntare girha prasuna madhva modam dadhana satam prodak grava kathor kanyapi param vindanti randit disham. He gives a very good example that the feet of Krishna, the boy Krishna, is as mridusparsha, as tender, but that can kill the Devan Shaktashur with one attack. So all these beautiful lines are there, and great poetry, and Kavitarkit Kesari, Shriman Veṅkaṭanātha, etc. Vedāntadeśika wrote in Sanskrit, Tamil and Manipravalam, mixture of Tamil and Prakrit, and Shatadush. We have been talking of this Shatadushani and Shatabhushani, the whole tradition that continues for 700 years. Professor Madhav Deshpande was also telling about it. And Vedāntadeśika became a legendary figure even in his lifetime. Several stories are current about his extraordinary scholarship and eloquence. I will not go into the details of these stories. And otherwise, he was a very amicable person. And in a quarter of night, he composed 1000 stanzas of the poem Paduka Sahasram. Then there were jealousies and attacks on him. And now this perhaps Pratik, or he is our participant, Pratik, and Shatavdhani ji might be tell what actually is the name in Tamil of the Shatkop Muni. So, but I often come across the name Shatkop, Shatmathan, Shatkop Muni, and he is revered like a Vedic seer in the whole tradition. And this Veṅkaṭadvari, in his Vishwagunādharsh Champu, devotes so many stanzas in the eulogy of Shatkop Muni, who is a Tamil saint, and he has written so many texts which are treated as the Veda, Tamil Veda. So yes. Eulogies.
He is called Nammalvar in the Tamil tradition, sir.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will take a note of it. Nammayuvar. I will note it somewhere.
Nammalvar.
So, yeah, I
heard. Nammalvar
yes,
was born in Shudra community And
Yes.
yet he was respected, highly respected by every people. And his greatest disciple, Madhurakavi Alvar, was a great scholar and a Brahmin. And all that Madhurakavi Alvar wrote was just in praise of Nammalvar. And Nammalvar is supposed to be the greatest among the 12 Alvars, and he is called Kutastha Prapanna, Prapanna Kutastha. He is the pinnacle of all the people who have submitted themselves to Lord. And in that sense, in the Sri Vaishnava tradition, the 12 Alvars, they belong to different communities. The first 3 Alvars, we don't know from where they were born, in which community, to which community they were born. And Tirupani Alvar is one person who is a Dalit. And he is also called as Munivahana because he was lifted on the shoulders of a Brahmin priest to the sanctum sanctorum of Sri Rangam. That's so the great aspect of bhakti in Sri Vaishnava tradition. It crossed the frontiers of mere birth and recognized value and virtue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for this, all this valuable information, and that is why we are having all these discussions. So these very beautiful stanzas on Shatkopa Rishi, on Nammayuvar, as you tell, Paridrishtvate Sahasra Shakham Paramam Dravina Samhitam Hitamna Gurave Karavam Nityamasmai Shatkopaya Maharshaye Pranaman. So this Dravina Samhita, Sahasra Shakha Dravina Samhita, like the Sahasravartma Samaved, and Anchama Chincha Tarumadbhutam Tam Panchamaradru Navadhirayantam. He belittles the 5 Amradrumas, Kalpavrakshas. So a Vraksha like that, Shatari Sangyam, Kilayasya Mule, Tapap Phalam, Kinchidudiritamna, etc. We have done some penance on the Mula of this Shatari Sangya, great tree, etc. So then, as I said, that this nexus between royalty and the sainthood, that also contributed. Later on, there may be that they are evils, but here that this Sarvagya Singha Bhupala is a devotee of Vedāntadeśika, Veṅkaṭanātha, and Veṅkaṭanātha or Vedāntadeśika has constant dialogues with him. He composed Tattva Sandesha, a text in Tamil, and Subhashit Nivi, an anthology of verses in Sanskrit, to be sent to him for his study, and he was constantly harassed. Okay. So he has authored as many as 115 verses. 60 of them are in Sanskrit, rest are bilingual, or in Manipravalam style, or in pure Tamil. Then details of his so many works you see, and how he enters into debates and dialogues through these works. Chatudushni I have already. So many of his works are commentaries, like commentaries on Upanishads, and then great works he has written, and he is cited in Sarvadarshan Sangraha by Madhvacharya, and he has written critique of Sri Bhashya, etc. And in Nyaya Parishuddhi establishes the authenticity of Nyaya Sutras of Gautama according to Vedas. This is also a dialogue, establishing a dialogue between Vedic Samhitas and Nyaya Sutra. You see, almost like a research kind of thing, and creating a dialogue between 2 traditions, Samhita tradition and Gautam Nyaya, etc. Then Adhikaran Darpana, Nigama Parimal, etc. Sheshwar, Mimamsa Paduka, Tatpare Chandrika, Gitarth Sangrah. So these commentaries also, he is entering into dialogues in these commentaries, and he has written some Vada text in debates like this Chakar Samarthanam. This Avyay Chakar Cha has occurred in one of his texts, and somebody criticizing the use of Cha. So he is writing the whole text in support of the use of Chakar in a sentence there. So such debates are also happening, constantly happening. Then Nyaya, Samvitti, etc. I will omit the details. Ayuta, Achyuva Saam, that is Achyuta Shatakam, it is in Prakrit by him. And now how he debates to defend the regional traditions, to his sect, the regional culture. He enters into great debates to defend the Dravinam Naya, scriptures in Tamil, and the great challenge posed before him, he meets it and stands as winner. So these details are there, and the debates in Veṅkaṭanātha, etc. Okay. Then I come to this second Vādirāja, who comes a little later, and he is a Madhva sect Acharya. I will omit the details about his life and deeds. He is related to this Udupi tradition, and he was a pontiff there. His kith and kins also were related to that Udupi. No.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Vādirāja here, he composed an epic poem by name Rukminisha Vijaya as an answer to Shishupala Vadham of Maghakavi, he said so.
Yes.
And even his Yukti Mallika is a very valuable work in Dvaita Vedanta. And he wrote a commentary on Mahabharata by name Lakshalankara, Mahabharata Lakshalankara. And he composed songs not only in Kannada, but also in his mother tongue, the coastal language, Tulu. In that sense, he was well versed in the four languages, Sanskrita, Prakrita, Tulu, and Kannada.
Yes, yes, I have noted about this Yukti Malika and his Rukminish Vijay also. The details are with me. And Vādirāja otherwise is a great philosopher, poet, and he enters into dialogue with the philosophical traditions also with Shankara in refutation to him. In Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, he writes a text, this Nyaya Ratnavali, in 900 verses in 5 chapters. So all these details, of course, most of them are with me, but you are more knowledgeable in the area, and I will perhaps save some time for you to speak otherwise also. So within 5 or 10 minutes, I will finish this lecture. Then we will have remarks by Rakesh Pandey, and if time permits, by Shatabdhani Ganesh also. About Al-Bīrūnī, I consider him very much significant so far as the dialogues are going in 10th, right from 10th, 11th century. Although he is an alien otherwise, coming from a different country, but he is a great scholar, and he wants to enter into dialogue with India's heritage. So we have to consider that way Al-Bīrūnī. So I often call upon my young friends in Sanskrit that they should read Al-Bīrūnī's, at least his text on India. It is available in English and Hindi translation, easily available. And many valuable informations about Indian text. Some of them I think are already lost, but he had access to the manuscripts. He is living in India, not stealing any manuscript. Either he is buying or persuading the Pandits to loan him the manuscripts. And that is why he talks of the difficulties in acquiring the manuscripts. These people are very, very reluctant to give you their knowledge, their material, even if you convince them that I will just study and I will try to understand your tradition. So this is the problem. This is one of the Vadas. You see, we have to consider. Don't live in your very sweet words. Sometimes we close ourselves and refuse to enter into dialogue with a person who may be a seeker of knowledge. We rather become hostile to him. Al-Bīrūnī talks about this also. So otherwise, Al-Bīrūnī, you see, he is citing some of the commentators who otherwise might not be known to us. Like Balbhadra, a commentator on Brahmagupta's text. So I was going to ask Ramasubramaniam whether the commentary of Balbhadra is available now, but it was available to Al-Bīrūnī. He criticizes, he vehemently criticizes Balbhadra. So otherwise, Al-Bīrūnī's life, you see, under so many perils and rewards, under so many patrons, eventually he comes with this Mahmud Ghazni in India and stays for some years. He is a Ghulam. And we were talking of this institution of slaves. So some of the slaves became very honorable. So Ghazni had a great respect for Al-Bīrūnī otherwise. He was obtained after a victory to the rival king by Ghazni, but otherwise as a scholar he was respected. And because this Mahmud Ghazni, who is very much hated in India, was a lover of poetry, and he has so many poets and scholars in his court, and they traveled with him. Otherwise, even when he is attacking India for loot, these scholars and poets are coming with him. So they are staying in India, and then they are staying here. Maybe some of them are studying the Indian traditions. So he learned Sanskrit here, some of the Indian languages. He studied the literature. He is a prolific writer. And this also we must accept that the people, the scholars in Arab world, they are very much better than us in documenting, in documentation, in writing Rojanamchas, diaries, records of history. So Al-Bīrūnī, at the age of 60, has prepared a list of his books, the works authored by him, as many as 145 books he had completed by that time. And he lived perhaps more than 70 up to the age of that. For 146. This George Saliba, who is a professor of Persian in Oxford University, has worked on Al-Bīrūnī. And unfortunately, most of his works have been lost. This is very unfortunate. Amir Khusro, most of him we have lost. Very valuable works by Amir Khusro on India. And great poetry. He is a great poet. Al-Bīrūnī is not a poet of that. He is more of a scholar and a philosopher also. So his works also have been lost to us. So this work by him, which is translated under the title Al-Bīrūnī's India in English, there is a translation by Sachau, Mr. Sachau, good translation. So it is Tahliq ma lihund min makulah maqbulah fiyal aql mardhullah. It will be verifying all that the Indians recount, the reasonable and the unreasonable. So this is a big text by Al-Bīrūnī. He has written so many works on world history, world geography, astronomy, astrology, and astrolabes. A great scientist and master of so many disciplines. So this work is a masterpiece, despite its prejudices, Al-Bīrūnī's prejudices, and sometimes he is very sarcastic and attacking. And otherwise he is appreciating. He is appreciating that great philosophers are here in India. And he appreciates the spirit of the people. So these are the lines from this work by Al-Bīrūnī. At the most, they fight with words, but they will never stake their soul or body or their property on religious controversy. Then he says all their criticism is directed against those who do not belong to them, against all foreigners. They call them lech and forbid any connection with them. And he could sense a tune of condemnation when the word mlecha is uttered in India. That is why he becomes a little bit bitter in his criticism, that you call us mlechas. And in some respect, we are more knowledgeable. That Al-Bīrūnī claims, and his claims are right to some extent, because he is a great mathematician. His knowledge of Greek mathematics and Greek astrology and astronomy and Greek philosophers, that is wonderful. He cites so many Greek philosophers and Greek mathematicians, and then he compares them to India's mathematics and India's philosophical systems. This is a unique work which Al-Bīrūnī could do. After him, Darashikoh tried that to some extent, but none of us in India did a work of that, a kind of hermeneutic work of that level, which Al-Bīrūnī could do because of his scholarship, because of his extraordinary scholarship. So we have to consider him as a man of dialogue, despite his sarcastic criticism. And what he says about, I have tried to say I agree with him. And it makes almost the definition of a Hindu. You see, so many definitions of Hindu are given. Hinsaya duite iti Hindu. I have given a definition on the basis of what Al-Bīrūnī says. Praveen Pandya ji kyun chale gaye? So, Nana Sampradaya Vibhage Sati, Paraspar Karkashavad Satatye Sati, Swatmavatvam Hindutvam. Now, I will not go into further details. And a wonderful concept which Al-Bīrūnī has is the concept of hearsay. Hearsay means Shruti Praman to him, because for him that is the Pramana. You contact the Pandits here and listen to them, what account they are giving. That is why he said it is all the accounts of India as heard by me from them. So this hearsay or Shruti Pramana is more important, he said, than the Pratyaksha Pramana, because I can't see the whole of India from my eyes. So whatever I have to learn by hearing to them, by listening to them, and listening is very important. So the whole concept of hearsay, he deals with it. How the hearsay in his epistemology will be a pramana. His concept of hearsay. Otherwise, hearsay is a derogatory term so far as it has been translated as hearsay. Balram Shuklaji might be able to tell us what is the actual word in pharmacy. It is not that a derogatory term in maybe in Persian. So the whole concept of hearsay, which comes as equal to Shruti Pramana, and this Pratigya Vakya by him, as I consider it, I shall place before the reader the theories of Hindus exactly as they are, and I shall mention in connection with them similar theories of the Greeks in order to show the relationship existing between them. Wherever he finds great ideas, he appreciates them. He appreciates Gita, Upanishads. He cites some commentaries and bhashyas also. He ultimately could acquire the manuscripts and could study them through original Sanskrit. And he cites stanzas also. And he appears to be a master of six systems of darshana. He is giving chapters after chapters on these philosophical systems in his work. So I will not go into the details. These are very important otherwise. What difficulties a foreign researcher face when coming to a country like India? His own prejudices. This wonderful thing is that he talks about the prejudice of a traveler himself, researcher himself, that he may be having a superiority complex in him, that I am the conqueror, I am coming with a conqueror, so I am superior to them. He might be having an ego of his own knowledge systems. So these are the difficulties from his side, and these are the difficulties from them side, that they close themselves in a narrow shell and they are unable to, they don't respond to you even if you convince them, etc., etc., etc. So I will finish here. I have taken more time than I had. I will ask